welcome to my channel. Today I need to discuss something that I found this week on TikTok. This is something that happened over a month ago, but I haven't seen anyone talking about this on YouTube, and I think it's pretty important to discuss it. But before we get into this, if you like watching commentary videos of the latest and lamest things here on the internet, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I upload once weekly, as well as going live several times a week to play video games. Thanks for anyone who supports my channel. TikTok has a feature called live battles. A live battle is where two users go head to head to see who can earn the most coins in a certain amount of time. They can trade those coins in at the end for real money. And because there's a bar above their head while they're going, who's winning at any time can go back and forth quite a lot, and sometimes people can steal it at the last second. That means it's quite dramatic. Sometimes these people react to losing, and they don't react very well. Because there's money involved, there's actually quite a lot of bad situations and drama that surrounds these people that are well known for doing the TikTok battles, and that's what I'm here to talk about today, is one of the worst situations I've ever seen regarding these battles. Dan Corey, better known as Hockey Golf Dad on TikTok, has a combined follower count of over 1 million people. He has two accounts. The old one that is just shy of 1 million followers, that one has been dormant since December of 2023, literally the end of December. So just at the beginning of this year is when he moved over to a new account. I suspect something happened to his live access, which is where he makes most of his money. I think maybe he lost access to going live and he had to move to a new account because that's where he makes a lot of the money. You don't make as much money on the videos, and his videos that he posts are so much different than the battles that he does that he wouldn't make enough money on those. So he would, of course, want to have live access. So right at the beginning of 2024, he goes onto this new account, Hockey Golf Dad 2.0, where he now has 124,000 followers. And that is where everything that we're going to talk about today takes place. It's all on this newer account. This topic was very hard to research. It's a very niche community, and it's just also the nature of the TikTok live battles. Unlike Twitch or YouTube, when you go live on TikTok, it doesn't save a copy of that live to the public so that we can see it. You can download it yourself if you're that user, but if you don't post it yourself, nobody has access to it unless someone was screen recording. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that have happened that were just missed because no one was recording them. But at first on TikTok, I couldn't find that much, just little snippets here and there of some of the reactions to the situation. But I was able to find more by Googling, and I'm very lucky to have found this. I found a subreddit that is dedicated to the receipts from this man's lives. People who are screen recording his shows and showing all the things he's saying, showing receipts and exposing the lies, because this guy, Dan Corey, is a compulsive liar. This man lies up, down, left, right, and center. He lies to cover up lies. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to the handful of people who are posting all of these receipts and screen recordings onto the Dan Corey Receipts HGD, which stands for Hockey Golf Dad subreddit. That subreddit is the reason I could even make this video, because without it I wouldn't have had enough proof of what was happening to be able to fully flesh out the situation. So thank you so much to all of those people who are making sure that everyone has access to the truth of these things that he's saying. But first, before we talk about what happened more recently, I want to speak about some things from his past. Now, just last month, shortly before the incident that took place that I'm going to talk about later, he did a viral story time of 7 parts talking about him going to jail. And there's so much to say about this. We're going to go through all of it, actually, because before we talk about what he did recently, I think it's important to show you guys exactly who he is, exactly what kind of person we're dealing with here, so that you understand that every single thing he says is most likely a lie. And if it's not a lie, it's a stretching of the truth. So let's go through this viral series he had, and then we'll talk about what's actually happened.
As to why I went to jail on February 12th of 2021, let's go back to the very beginning. Let's start August 6th of 2018. I'm sitting at work. I get a phone call from my ex-wife who said, "I am at your house." I just called the police on Jacob. The house is the house that we had lived in with our 4 kids for 20 plus years. Jacob was 17 and a half at the time. He is now 21 years old. I said, "What did he do?" She said, "You better just come home." I went home. Jacob and her were being both disrespectful to one another, swearing at one another. A police officer was already standing in my house. And I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm not really sure." Jacob yells, "Mom is pissed off because I won't mow the lawn." That's basically the gist of the argument, mind you. But Jacob was being mean, disrespectful, and hateful towards Mom, wasn't listening. We took the car keys from him. I said, "This argument is ridiculous. The police should have never been in the house and should have never been called for that matter." I said, "I'm going back to work." I left and went back to work. After work was over, went back home. My buddy Kyle picked me up. It was time for golf league. Played 9 holes of golf for golf league. Don't remember how I shot, to be honest. Came back home with my buddy, and we're going to watch a ball game and have a few beers.
So after all of that goes down, the cops are in his house, and there's a big fight happening between his ex-wife and his son. He goes back to work, and instead of coming home when he's done to speak with his family, address what happened, and make sure everybody's okay, he goes golfing, which already is a few hours, right? And then after he's done golfing with his friend, he goes to the friend's house and has a few beers there instead of going home. So he stays gone most of that evening, most likely, and comes home late instead of being a father and coming home and addressing the situation that has happened. Who does that?
My son Jacob is sitting there in the dark, demanding that I give him the car keys. I said, "Jacob, I'm not giving you the car keys." He wants to yell and scream about how Mom was being this and that. And I said, "Jake, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I think the argument was originally stupid. And yes, the cops did not need to be called. I'm not giving them the car keys. Sorry. Shouldn't have been rude and disrespectful to your mom. And you should have listened." Things were said. Things then that he did that I have never mentioned. Kyle and I know. But, he was a dumb kid trying to get his way. And you know how they'll say and throw things and throw a fit. I wasn't having it.
So he's talking about the fact that his 17-year-old son is screaming and yelling and throwing things, trying to get his way. And he acts like that's just totally normal, that kids always do that, and that's just not the case. Most kids in a happy family don't just scream and yell and throw things to get their way. They would have learned that somewhere, and it's usually from their parents. I have a feeling that he learned how to do that from his own father, based on some of the things I've already seen about this man that we haven't gotten to yet. I'm speaking with that foresight of having researched it, but this is another early sign that this guy is not actually a positive person. He is always talking about, positivity and positive vibes only on his videos and on his lives, and that's just not the case. He is not a positive person. It's all just an act for money.
Jacob then brought it up a level, and I turned to him and I said, "Jake, don't you ever. I brought you into this world and I will take you out. I will effing you." With a K, ends in double L. Now, mind you, I've never laid a hand on my son, nor anyone in my life since I was beat up when I was a 14-year-old kid, the last fight I was in. For that, I was given terroristic threats charges. Felony terroristic threats charges.
Okay, this is where things start to get interesting. I have to debunk all of this. First of all, let's take a look at these court filings. Dan's son recorded this angry, drunken rant, and so because of that, we have exact quotes here. Dan severely understated what he actually said. He said, "I will rain holy effing terror on your ass. That's not even a joke. You think I effing choked you last night? I will effing probably end you if you ever effing do that to me again. And I will effing make sure you effing never leave this effing house again." So not only does he admit during this statement in the video to choking his son previously, which in the video he states he didn't do, he also tells him that he is not joking and that he's going to end him if he ever does whatever he was doing again. Who does that, okay? This is not an adult. This is a 17-year-old child. You do not say something like that to your minor son. So the choking incident that they're referring to took place a couple days prior, and there were many witnesses to this. So apparently Dan was drunk that day as well, and he was messing around with his son. They were roughhousing a bit, and apparently Dan was being mean that day, and he took it a little too far, and he started choking his son. He pushed him down onto the couch and started choking him. and multiple people witnessed this. One of the witnesses had to break it up because she thought it was going too far and she was worried he was going to hurt his son. So it had to be broken up. He didn't stop on his own.
Where we last left off, Jacob was using his video of me yelling at him as blackmail, trying to get the keys back to his car, which didn't happen. After a few minutes, Jake calmed down. Him and I and Kyle sat, watched the ball game. Everything was fine.
So after everything that happened, the choking, the other arguments between him and his mom and him and his dad, Dan thinks he's going to just take his son to a baseball game and then everything's fine now. Like, you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to apologize. There's no addressing the situation. It's just, well, we're at a ball game now and everything's good. It's just so wild to me that he thought everything would be fine after that, because that's just not how it works. I think he just wanted things to be fine, and so he said things were fine when they weren't. He truly believes his own lies.
Jacob thought it was a super funny video of me yelling at him and sent it to all of his buddies. One of those buddies' mother, we'll call her Karen, was concerned a couple days later when she saw it and decided to call the police.
Good. I'm glad she did. You can't just go through life saying stuff like that to your minor child and think that you didn't commit a felony. That is illegal. You threatened to end your son. If your son felt the need to record you during a drunken rant, then there's probably precedence for that. He probably has been through something before with you in that state where he felt somehow his safety could be in danger, and so he recorded you threatening him, and he is not the bad person for doing that. Nor is the woman you called a Karen for calling the police to try to protect your son, because you obviously weren't going to protect him. You're the one threatening him. You see what I mean, though, with this pattern of pointing the finger at everyone else when his own actions got him there? He's the one that said the threat, but he's blaming his son for recording it and sharing it with people, and blaming the woman for calling the police when seeing a man threaten his child. It just makes no sense that he's going to blame everybody else. His own actions got him there.
So on August 8th of 2018, I got a phone call and said, Dan, can you come down and talk to us about Jake? I said, what did he do now? Why, you might ask, did I say, what did he do now? Well, let's just say Jake had somewhat of a colorful past when it came to the law. He got kicked out of high school, kicked out of the alternative school, spent a couple times up at the juvenile home. Jake had his own little problems before this incident happened.
So he was so unaware of his own actions that he assumed when they wanted to speak with him that it was because his son was in trouble. I don't know why he thought that. Like, does he not even remember what he said? Was he so drunk when he said that he just didn't even remember he made a threat like that? That's the only way I can think someone would be so oblivious of their own behavior that they didn't realize the cops wanted to speak to him. I mean, he walked right in there and sat down to get questioned without realizing he was there for himself and not to pick up his son. While researching for this video, I did find an article about something the son had done, and I'm not going to go into detail because this video is not about him. But with a father like this, you're almost already set up to have a bad life, because you have so many things to overcome as the child of someone in and out of jail like that. I would know. I'm the daughter of a delinquent. My mom was in and out of jail my whole life. And it takes so much more time and effort to overcome the setbacks that you face being raised by someone like that than with someone that has a normal family. If you have a parent with a temper and a narcissistic attitude who also has substance abuse problems and it just goes in and out of jail, it's just so much harder to even get to the place where you can live a normal and healthy life, getting a job, having your own place. That stuff is infinitely harder when you have a parent who has been doing the wrong thing your whole life. Because not only do you not have a role model to look up to who did those things that you're trying to accomplish, but also that parent has probably actively harmed you enough where it's just even harder to overcome that, mentally or even financially, because sometimes these parents will mess up your credit or they will just financially abuse you and you can't afford anything because they're taking all your money. It just really leads to having a hard time once you become an adult with actually making a life for yourself. So I don't think it's right to discuss what's going on with him. He has a horrible father, and he has probably been dealing with this kind of stuff his whole life. So I don't think that's important. And no matter what, everything we're discussing about his father today is infinitely worse than anything that the son did. So the fact that Dan is even bringing up his son having a past like that is kind of annoying, because he's just doing it to try to push blame off of himself and act like it's his son's fault, which again, it's not. I also really don't like the way Dan talks about his son's problems. He uses an inflection in his voice and in a really condescending, stupid, patronizing way. He says he has his own little problems, just completely invalidating his son's struggles. And it's probably because he doesn't want to admit to himself in his own mind that he's a failure as a father. But he's just going to go ahead and make this whole big boo-hoo sympathy for me story time about his kid getting him arrested, when it's him that got himself arrested. It's his actions that led to that. It's just, again, that he's always trying to point the blame to other people. Any little reason he can pull to make the other person the bad guy, he's going to do it. And it's complete lies.
We'll just talk to you when you get down here. I said, I have a meeting at noon. They said, fine, come down in a couple hours. I went down to the police station fully expecting Jacob had done something wrong, and now I've got to deal with the consequences of that. Nope, it turns out, throughout the questioning, I realized they're talking about what happened a couple days ago when I yelled at Jake and I refused to give him the car keys, and I said, I brought you into this world, I'll take you out. And I said, do I need to get a lawyer? Are you charging me with... They said, well, yeah, you might want to get a lawyer. I said, this is ridiculous. I said, this is ridiculous. I'm going back to work. I stood up to go back to work, and they said, no, we have to arrest you. You're being placed under arrest for felony terroristic threats. So on August 8th of 2018, I was arrested. So I was arrested August 8th of 2018, put in a jail cell for approximately 22 hours until I could go in front of the judge and be bailed out, or in my case, I was released on my own recognizance because I was a solid member of the community, a volunteer. I had lived in my home for nearly 20 years, had a career of the same job for nearly 10 years. I was considered not a flight risk.
When he's describing the people that he's in jail with, why does he sound like he thinks he's so much better than all these people? He thinks he doesn't deserve to be there, but he choked out his son and threatened to end his life. This is a minor child. How would you not deserve to be in there? Who is to say he wouldn't actually follow through with those threats the next time? Just because he thinks he wouldn't do it doesn't mean the police think that he wouldn't. They don't know that, and so they have to treat it as if he's serious. And he even said in the quote that he's not joking. That really hurt his case, I bet, the fact that it said, I'm not joking. He literally said he's not joking. Therefore, you have to take everything he said seriously. He wanted to end his son's life, and he threatened to do it if he did whatever he did to cause that anger again. So, he absolutely deserved to be in that jail cell. I just think it's funny that he believed he didn't.
On a side note, they put me in a jail cell with a guy who was accused of beating his wife, beating a guy in the face with a bicycle chain, who was also a meth addict and dealer. That's cute. Get out of jail August 9th. Decide not to hire a lawyer. Big mistake. Decide to rely on a public defender who convinces me to take a 2-year stay of adjudication. So, on January 17th of 2019, approximately 5 months after this began, I signed a 2-year stay of adjudication, which means if I don't break the law in the next 2 years, not a problem. It gets expunged from my record, and it's like it didn't happen. Not a problem, I figured, as I do not break the law. I was a solid member of society.
I laughed so hard the first time that I watched this. The irony of him saying that he doesn't break the law while giving us a story time about all the times that he broke the law. How do you not realize while you're saying these things that they don't make any sense? It's like his lies unravel his other lies. He can't keep them all straight. And he's just confused and just doing his best to keep up this persona of being a positive person.
Hanging over my head, 1 year and 1 day in prison. And the conditions that I had to take domestic violence classes, stories to come later, that's entertaining, and also take a chemical use assessment and follow recommendations. Why? Because on August 8th, I admitted that I bought a 6-pack of beer while golfing. Stone sober by the time when I got home, but I admitted to drinking Another mistake I made is always telling the truth, which will come in stories down the road. So, those were the conditions. I signed my stay of adjudication on January 17th, 2019. So, I finish up in court, walk across the street, and meet with the probation officer they assigned me. She's going over the rules and how often I need to check in, and she says, Mr. Corey, you also are not allowed to drink during the course of your probation. I said, I said, the judge actually never said that. So she spins around, grabs the file, opens it up, and reads, and says, that's unusual. Well, if they say that if you take that chemical use assessment and they say you can't drink, you can't drink. I said, yeah, I understand that. At this point, I can tell she's annoyed. She wanted that provision signed by the judge, but there was nothing she could do about it. April 4th, I went and took my chemical use assessment at Stages of Change in Mankato, Minnesota. A week later, April 11th, I got the results back. We find that Mr. Corey doesn't have any substance abuse problems, and therefore nothing was going to change. But it did change.
So I looked into the rules about being on probation in Minnesota just so I could understand, because I'm sure it's different in every state. But it is a standard exclusion for people on felony probation to not be allowed to drink. It's true in almost every state, with both misdemeanor and felony probation and parole. So just because the judge didn't say that he's not allowed to drink does not mean that he's allowed to continue drinking. Drinking excessively is what caused this whole situation to happen, and for him to choke his son and for him to yell at him about all this stuff. He acts as though he is owed the freedom to drink as he pleases when he is not. Most people that get in trouble and have to go on probation or parole are not allowed to drink. Why does he think he's so special that he should be able to drink when that's the reason he's even there in the first place? It makes no sense, but he thinks he's so special and that he's entitled to it. He is not.
April 4th, 2019, took my chemical use assessment. April 11th, 2019, get my results back. They find no chemical use problems. Take 12 hours of refresher classes. Why 12 hours? What I found out in the industry of probation, everybody likes to have their hands in the cookie jar of money.
So he thinks the whole thing is just about money and that she is just on a power trip or something. But your PO has a lot of power over the whole process of you being under probation. And she would know that he was drinking a lot from the witness statements and from everything that happened. So she wouldn't want to let him slide without having to take classes and do, urine tests to make sure he's not drinking. Just because it wasn't said by the court doesn't mean that he gets away scot-free. He doesn't have to take any substance abuse classes. Like, she wanted to make sure he does those things because they know that he was drinking and that's what caused this. So of course she's going to call the people and say, hey, you didn't know this context, She informed the people there.
2 weeks later, I get a phone call from the lady I took the assessment with. She says, Dan, ignore the assessment I sent you 2 weeks ago. I have to make a few changes. I asked why. She said, your probation officer called and wants me to tweak a few things. I'm thinking to myself, you're the person with the chemical use background and the education. If my probation officer gets to say whatever she wants in my recommendations, why have me spend the $250 to take the chemical use assessment in the first place? Again, seems to be a money shell game. Approximately 5 weeks later, my new recommendations come in the mail. 20 hours of class instead of 12. And Mr. Corey must abstain from all alcohol and submit to random UAs. At this point, I should have called my public defender or a lawyer because things didn't seem to add up and didn't seem to be quite fair. However, I didn't call a lawyer, rolled with the punches, figured I've got 18 months left of probation. Not a big deal. We'll get through this.
The first assessment that he says he took, where he said he only had to do 12 hours of classes or something, was basically he would have gone in there, he would have answered some questions for them, and he would have done a urine test where they would test to see, and if he was clean and he answered all the questions correctly, then they would see in person no evidence that he has an alcohol or a drug abuse problem. But that doesn't mean that just because he went in there and did one clean urine and answered some questions in the right way, that means that he doesn't have a problem. He probably just wasn't drinking for a couple days to get a clean urine test, right? And then they didn't have the context that he had a problem with drinking, so they didn't know, and they would have said he didn't really have to do much of anything for these like drug or alcohol classes. So the PO called and informed the people there, like, hey, just so you know, here's the context. He has a drinking problem, and that's what caused all of these situations. He was drunk, and he had a freak out on these people. He choked his son, and he threatened to end his life. So that is important. And if that woman knew that the first time, if she knew that the first time, then there wouldn't have been a second one, because she would have put all of that on the first one. So that's just the PO making sure that he gets the consequences that he is supposed to have as someone who had an alcohol problem. She doesn't want him to skirt past the requirements to get help, because when you get in trouble like that, even just a misdemeanor, they're going to make you either go to therapy or at least get seen by someone to see if you need therapy or not. And you have to go, if there's any signs of alcohol or drug abuse, you have to go and get assessed. And usually once you're assessed, then you are shown to have a problem, you have to go through the classes. He thought that he was going to skirt past all of that. He really thought that he would go on probation for almost 2 years, be able to drink whenever he wants, not have to do pee tests, and just basically just not have to follow any of the rules, when that's just not the case. That's what probation is. It's to keep you from doing the things that you were doing before that caused you to break the law. It's just crazy he thinks he's above all of this.
So my probation officer successfully had the recommendations changed on my chemical use assessment. Now I'm submitting to random UAs. Not a problem. June, July, August, September goes, not a problem. However, September 28th, I get a phone call from a friend of mine. Turns out that the woman I'd been dating for approximately 8 months was having an affair with a friend of his. I was devastated. I went home, opened my fridge, grabbed a beer, and I drank several beers throughout the day. Sad, crying, and depressed. To the point where Jake and his girlfriend actually came over to check on me because they knew how much I invested into this relationship.
So he went home after finding out that he was cheated on by his girlfriend. He opened the fridge and grabbed a beer that was already cold in there and ready for him. That means that he would have bought that beer before he knew his girlfriend cheated on him. He didn't say he bought it that day. He said it was already in the fridge. He opened the fridge and grabbed a beer. That means that he already had the alcohol before there was even a situation to drink, and that means he was drinking while on probation before there was a reason for him to want to do so. He tries to frame it as if the being cheated on is the reason he drank, but it's not. He already had that beer, and that is actually not allowed. You can't possess beer even. You can't have it in your home. Even if it belongs to another resident who legally lives at your house with you, if they have it in the house, you can get in trouble. You can get a probation violation for that. You're not even allowed to be near alcohol when you're on probation, especially felony probation. They're going to take that more seriously. So that just the way he framed that proves that he was not telling the truth about it. He already had the beer that he was drinking that day.
Monday, September 30th. I leave town to go on a work trip to the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, approximately 2.5 hours away from home. I get a text message at 1:15 saying I need to come in, submit to a random UA. I message back, I'm in the cities on a work trip. My probation officer said, no, you're not. I took a picture of the Westin Hotel right outside the Edina Galleria in Edina, Minnesota, and said, yes, I am. She said, you need to be back by 4 o'clock or there'll be a warrant out for your arrest. I tried calling her 3 times. I texted 3 more times. Said there was no way to get home by 4 o'clock, but that I will come home right after my meeting and I will submit to whatever you need. She never picked up the phone, never texted me back.
I did look into this one as well, and they don't restrict travel within the state of Minnesota most of the time, but the court can add on the stipulation that they have to get permission or at least let their probation officer know that they're going to be going somewhere that's outside of the normal range they're usually in, like outside of their town or like where they live. So he is saying that there wasn't a travel restriction, but he's a compulsive liar. We don't know if he's telling the truth there or not, and I haven't seen any proofs otherwise, so I'm going to assume that if they arrested him for it, that most likely he did have a travel restriction.
Pulled back into town about 7 o'clock that night, went home, decided I'll just show up at her office the next morning and explain. She can talk to my boss, she can talk to whoever she would like.
So his probation officer tells him that he has to be back in town by 4 p.m. to provide a urine sample for them. And he says that's not enough time because he has to do whatever he has to do for work. So he'll come back whenever he's done with work as soon as he can, but probably won't be 4. He's telling her. He's texting and calling her, telling her this. But she never responds to him. So he never hears from her, never gets a, yeah, that's okay. Just goes on about doing what he's doing. But the thing is the math there isn't mathing because he said that she contacted him at 1:15 p.m. and he had to be back by 4. So that gives him 2 hours and 45 minutes to drive 2 hours home. That's an extra 45 minutes more than he needs for either side of that trip, beginning or end, or even a little in the middle to worry about traffic, right? That's plenty of time to get back and be there at the time that they said. But he doesn't really care about that, and he thinks that they're going to bend all the rules for him and that it doesn't matter if he's not there by 4. So first he said he was going to go right after, right? But then he gets back at 7 p.m. He says that he gets back at 7 p.m. and no probation office is going to be open at 7. Most of them close at like 5 p.m. They're not open that late. They don't stay open that late because they want to go home to their families, right? So it's not going to be open at 7 p.m. And therefore, because he gets home so late, he decides that he's just going to go the next morning and he'll do the P-test then. And I don't know why he makes all these assumptions. He just makes so many assumptions about the way that probation works, and he doesn't realize how delusional that is. They tell you what to do, and if you don't do it, you get violated. That is it. There's no questions, no bending the rules for anybody. Come on. Like, I don't know why he thought that they would just do nothing when he didn't get there when he was supposed to. That's crazy.
9:15, my son's standing outside in the driveway with his girlfriend, comes walking in the house crying, "Dad, the police are here." "Jake, it's not a big deal." Go down, I talked to the police, explained I was put in cuffs. I was arrested for not showing up at 4 o'clock. Mind you, I didn't need permission to go anywhere in the state of Minnesota. I had a work trip. I was arrested. I was put in jail for 4.5 days before I could see the judge. Subsequently, I lost my job. Job I had had for 10 years. Made a very good 6-figure income.
So obviously, they arrest him for missing this appointment where he was told he had to be there. And he talks again about, I didn't need permission. But again, he's a compulsive liar. We can't believe what he says without proof. He also believes that he shouldn't even have to take the urine tests to begin with. So, of course, he has a really lax attitude about that. He doesn't care because he doesn't think he has an alcohol problem when he does. So I can't believe that every step of the way he really thinks he's still the victim here. He did this to himself. He got arrested because he didn't make it to the appointment. I understand he was at work, but they don't care about that. They really don't. They don't care. If you didn't tell them and you weren't supposed to be there, they're going to arrest you. That's just how it works. And I don't know why he thought he was above all of that.
I had lost my job. I had been arrested, and now I got to go in front of a judge for a probation violation for drinking beer in my house.
Wait, I thought you were arrested because you missed the urine test while traveling. Now it's because you drank and when you found out you got cheated on. Do you see how he does that though? Like how he kind of combines everything into one and like kind of makes it confusing on purpose so that it's hard to find the truth. It's really confusing to even listen to his own story because it doesn't make sense.
Month later, in front of a judge, luckily I was given no more jail time. I was given 90 hours of community service, time served, and take a new chemical use assessment, follow all recommendations. I also lost my stay of adjudication, which meant I was now a felon. Spent the next couple of months pretty much hunkered down in my house, depressed, tried to stay isolated, ran through any savings I had, put my house up for sale, and was pretty much at about what I thought was the lowest point in my life. Little did I know. Luckily, a few months later, my former boss called in January of 2020. Offered me a position back with the company, actually as director of sales. It wasn't going to be at the salary I had. I had previously made 6 figures because I worked on commission. It was going to be about half of that. But it was an opportunity. It was with a company I loved, a company I spent 10 years with. I had great coworkers, so I gladly accepted and was thankful for the opportunity. So over the course of the next 7 months, I feel like I did a great job for the company. I fulfilled my obligations, took all my classes, fulfilled my community service obligations, and I think I was on the road to recovery. I was feeling better. Still with some financial problems, but I was feeling much better than I was before.
He's talking about getting his job back and keeping his head down and doing what he's supposed to do while on probation. But he goes on in the very next sentence to admit that that was not true.
August 23rd of 2020, made a poor decision. Was having a shitty day, went home, had a few beers. Next day, got called in for a UA. I was truthful with my probation officer, told him right away I screwed up, had some beers in my house. He said, "You were being honest. I'm not going to violate you." He called 2 months later when I was at work and said, I'm going to have to write you up for that violation. I asked why. He said, don't worry. I'm just going to have you take a chemical use assessment, and if there are no recommendations, you'll be off probation on January 17th like you're supposed to. If not, follow through with the classes, and then you'll be done. My court hearing wasn't until January 19th, 2 days after I was supposed to be off probation. So be it. Went in front of the judge on January 19th. She said, Mr. Corey, have you taken a new chemical use assessment? My lawyer piped in and said, we have, Your Honor, but we haven't gotten the results back. The judge said, if there are no recommendations, you are to be removed from probation. If not, follow through with the classes, and once those classes are over, you'll be removed from probation. So, on January 20th, we got the recommendations back were no recommendations. My lawyer filed them with the county attorney on January 21st of 2021. I was to be removed from probation.
First he says he's doing good, then he says he made a bad decision and decided to have a couple beers after a long night or something. Let me show you how many times he's actually violated probation, because he severely downplays how often this kind of thing happened.
The judge informed me, Mr. Corey, you must take a chemical use assessment and follow all recommendations and then be removed from probation. If there are no recommendations, you are to be removed from probation immediately. She asked if I had taken a chemical use assessment. I had, on January 6th. My lawyer jumped in and said, we don't have the results back, Your Honor. That actually was not true. We did have the results. There were no recommendations. My lawyer did not want to file them with the court at that time because my probation officer was also in on that hearing, and she was concerned that if there were no recommendations, he was going to ask for more additional steps. So we waited. Following day, I called my attorney and said, did you file those with the county attorney? She said, no, I forgot to do that. She called me the next day at work and said, Dan, I filed all the paperwork showing there are no recommendations. You should be removed from probation immediately. Fantastic. Finished up work, went home, ate, got a phone call from Alex, needed to give him a ride home from hockey practice back to Mom's house. I picked up Alex and decided I have company coming in for the weekend, kind of a celebration after 2 years of hell I've gone through. And I decided to swing by the liquor store and pick up a case of beer.
So he's not even officially off probation yet, but he stops and buys some beer and takes it home to have a party to celebrate being off of probation. If you're not officially off probation yet, you're not even allowed to possess that alcohol. You shouldn't have it in your car. You shouldn't have it on your person. You shouldn't have it in your house. It doesn't even matter if you don't drink it. You are not supposed to possess alcohol on probation, and until you have a signed piece of paper that says you have been released, you are playing with fire by messing with that. I don't know why he thought that was a good idea. Obviously it was not.
Put it in my garage. Didn't drink a drop. Next morning, my probation officer calls and wants me to come in for a UA. I said, we submitted the paperwork to the county attorney yesterday. I'm to be removed from probation immediately. He said, you're not removed from probation until I sign discharge papers.
He really thought just because his lawyer had submitted paperwork that he was off probation. There's so many people that make that mistake. You are still on probation till they sign a legal document and then give you a copy of it. Until you have that in your hand, you are still under their supervision and you can still get violated. That is exactly what happened here. And he can't blame anyone else for that. It is on him. It is up to him to know what he's allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do and when it ends. That is completely on him.
So I had to go in for a UA. Good thing is, I didn't drink. However, turns out I don't like to pee in front of guys. Always had that problem when I had to go in for UAs. So I was arrested in his office, taken to the jail. Within 10 minutes, I provided a clean sample. Didn't drink. I was held overnight, provided another clean sample, but it didn't matter. He filed charges that I had illegally went and purchased a case of beer because I was not only not allowed to consume, but I was also not allowed to possess alcohol.
Dan denying the first sample, even if it was not on purpose, they're not going to give you a second chance. I mean, they'll still do the urine to see if it comes up positive or negative, but they're not going to excuse you just because you couldn't do it the first time. I don't think that Dan realizes how many people will lie about not being able to go because of the fear that there's another person watching, or just because, oh, I didn't drink enough water, or, oh, sorry, I just peed. Like, there's so many excuses, and there is no real way for them to be able to know whether you're lying or telling the truth about that. And because so many other people are going to lie about it, they're going to have to assume that you're lying too. It doesn't matter if you're just a little scared to go. You had done a lot of samples before that, so you already knew how to do it. It's not like it was your first time ever. This was at the end of 2 years of probation. You had done it before. The fact that you denied it, even with 2 clean ones after, they're still going to violate you because you wasted their time, you know? And the fact that you had the alcohol, that would also be a violation. So that's just him not knowing the rules of probation, and that's his own fault.
I went in front of the judge on February 5th of 2021, where the judge said, "This is not your first violation. Mr. Corey, I am sentencing you to 6 months in jail." So on February 12th, I checked into jail. By the way, that day I had to give power of attorney to my father because I had to sell my house, and the closing was on February 12th because of the financial problems I was in. So on February 12th, I checked into jail. I got out June 3rd of 2021. That's when I started my TikTok.
So he went to jail for 6 months because he did those other 2 violations there, 2 on the same day, it looks like. Right at the end when he's supposed to get off. So stupid. And then he says when he got out of jail after 6 months, he created his TikTok. Lucky us, huh? Lucky us. Okay, so that wraps up the first situation that I wanted to discuss. I wanted to show you guys that he is a compulsive serial liar who is a perpetual victim, and that he uses that sympathy to make money on TikTok. And hopefully that first story was enough to show you at least a bit that he is not a great person and that you can't trust everything that he says. And with that said, let's talk about what happened just a month ago. The situation that I'm going to talk about happened just a couple weeks after he posted these story time videos to his TikTok. Let's discuss what happened. A woman named Angela Smith was one of the top donors for Dan's live battles, and she was a level 26, meaning she had donated quite a lot of money to him over the 2 years that she had been following him. She was also very active in the chats when he went live. She felt like she was part of the community. Apparently, if you donate enough money to Dan, he will give you his personal cell phone number to try to make you feel special, like you're his friend, like you're a real friend of his and not just an internet friend, right? Like you're something special to him, like you're close, and he will use that connection to try to keep you donating. So basically, Dan was just taking advantage of the parasocial relationship between a creator and their followers and was using that to have a direct line of communication to these people that were giving him so much money and try to make sure that they continued to do so. One day, while Dan was live battling with people, Angela was having a really hard time mentally. She was posting in the chat, talking with people, and talking about how she wanted to end her own life. And she even attempted to call Dan on the number he had given her, but because he was live, he ignored that call. Only a couple minutes after he ignored her call, she created a TikTok crying, saying that she had just taken 2 bottles of pills and that she wanted to end her life, and just talking about how over everything that she was. And she was really hurting. Luckily, this video doesn't exist out there anymore. I wouldn't have watched it even if it did, but it got deleted along with her entire TikTok after what happened. So luckily that's not out there now. So I'm just going based off of what people who have seen it when it happened said, people that were in the community and trying to help her at the time. That's what they said had happened in the video. Dan was live and ranting about his own problems while this was happening. And people started to flood into his comments to say that they had seen our video and to try to get his attention, and so that he would know that it happened. And he just kept going on this stupid rant.
I am just tired of awful, awful people. I'm tired of awful human beings is what I'm tired about. That's what I'm tired about. I am sick of ugly, mean, nasty, horrible, awful human beings. You got people like Angela going through things. Or probably is going through something in their life, whatever it may be. And people spend their day trying to make my life miserable. God, I would like them to form a fucking line and come right at me, to my face. That's what I'd like. Odds on this app, they act a certain way. That's not who they are. Frauds. frauds. And now she's going through more stuff, and I feel terrible for her.
Every single word that he said during this rant could apply to him, and it's so crazy, the irony of that, because he probably had no idea that this would apply to him, that this rant that he said would apply word for word to the situation that he was in at that time by ignoring her. I just can't believe that he even referenced her comments. During this rant, he references, people are going through some things. Angela's going through some things. But then he just continued to talk about himself and what he's going through, which is nothing compared to what is happening to Angela at that time, right? He says he feels terrible for her, but he does nothing to help her. It seems like he just said that for the camera, to make himself look like a good person. He's not a good person, but he has to try to make himself look like a good person. And then shortly after that is when someone finally informed him of the video that she had created, and he watched it, and let's see his reaction to him seeing that video.
Text, and then I just looked at your video. Honey, don't do that. Don't do that. That is definitely not the answer, okay? So don't do that. Angela, are you here? You have everybody in here wanting to talk to you. Angela, we all want to talk to you. Wanda, I'm glad you said that, because that's what made me go look at her social, because I'm like, how does Wanda know Angela? And I'm like, okay, she probably posted something on TikTok. So I went and looked at it. Yeah, you're right. I do have her number.
So after he sees the video, his whole demeanor changes. He starts talking to the chat as if Angela's there, saying something in a condescending tone. Honey, don't do that. And I don't even think she was there at that point anymore. I don't think she was in the chat actively. I think she had already exited TikTok. And he even had to be reminded by the chat that he had her phone number. So he picks up his phone. He's like, oh, I have her phone number. That's right. But he doesn't give it to them. He doesn't call the police or anything. He tries calling her once and then texts her once. But what's that going to do if she's already far enough gone to need actual medical intervention? He should have been calling the police. But because of his past with the police, he doesn't want to call them. So all the people in the chat are asking him for the area code so that they can call the police in her area, because then those police can try to figure out where she lives and get to her, hopefully in time to save her life, right? But he won't do that. And then he contemplates whether or not he actually wants to get off of the live, and eventually he does decide to, and he goes for a drive, according to him. He went for a drive while everybody else was trying to figure out how to help her. He did nothing. After he went off live, there was a lot of people trying to figure out through her social media where she lived, and they had a really hard time with that. There just wasn't a ton of clues. She was pretty good about not exposing her location. But after several hours, someone did find out where she lived, and they called a wellness check. And unfortunately, because of how long it took them, because they didn't have his help, who had that information the entire time, it was too late. She was already gone. After all of this occurred, Dan decided that it would be in his best interest to try to downplay the relationship that they had.
Shenanigans does it, and then everybody duets it. He was friends with this woman for 2 years. Nope. He was one of the biggest gifters. Not even in the top 20, under 30K in coins. That's under $300 over a period of 6 weeks. So I wouldn't say that. Also, don't know the truth. I keep calling and the phone number rings and it goes to the voicemail of her business. It goes to the voicemail of her business still.
So he says over the 6 weeks, she only sent 300, which is already a lot because his content is like nothing. But she actually was a level 26, which means she would have spent over $2,000 on him since she started following him. That's a lot of money to send to somebody who makes content like that, right? So that's already a lot. But even if it was just 300, that means that it's not enough for you to care about her and try to save her life. Like, she doesn't give me enough money, so I don't care if she dies. Like, what? Why does the money matter? He keeps bringing up the money. That part does not matter at all. Someone in the Reddit comments claimed that he also made a statement at one point saying that the death could be fake and that it might be a hoax and that someone's just lying to try to, like, mess with him because he has so many haters, right? And all the trolls. He always talks about the trolls and the haters. And that also that he would kind of want to see a death certificate because that would prove to him that it was real. Now, there's no recording of that happening, so I can't say for sure that it did, but someone is claiming it did, so I'm going to put it out there that it's possible that he said that. Either way, he's arguing about all these little things that just don't matter. The money doesn't matter, and no one owes it to you to prove that this woman died. She died. It doesn't matter. No one has to prove it to you. Who are you, you know? What matters is you had a chance to save someone's life and you didn't, and that's disgusting.
Announced it. So they posted my address on Reddit. They've body shamed my girlfriend. They've been like nothing but horrible people, like the Justice for Angela. Yeah, I call everybody on here a friend. I've never met them in real life, but I call everybody a friend. Why wouldn't I?
In this short clip, he talks about the fact that he calls everyone his friend. And then he gets mad about the fact that there's a page called Justice for Angela. He gets so mad anytime anyone mentions her following her death. He doesn't want anyone to talk about it. Positive vibes only, to the detriment of reality, right? He went so far as to mute someone for saying that they missed her. Like, someone in the comments, not even trying to start anything, just said, "Oh, I'm kind of sad today. I miss Angela. I'm thinking about her a lot today." And he muted that person for the rest of the life. She wasn't allowed to chat in there anymore. If she wanted to chat within the community, she actually had to go to the other person that he was battling. And I'm not going to show the proof here because it's a lot of screenshots of the chats that she was posting in the live stream of the other woman who was battling him. But I'm going to have the link to it in the description. I did look it over, so I do believe this really happened. But it's just a lot. It's tedious to try to look at the proof here on this YouTube video. So I'm not going to do that to you guys, but it's there if you want to look.
By calling her a friend on the screen is to blame. How in the fuck is that possible? Nowhere in anybody's deranged mind does some woman that lives 2,000 miles away, I'm responsible for what decisions they make. Nobody believes that except deranged morons like the Justice for Angela account. Life is worse with you in it, number one bubble over there.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, our planet is worse off with people like that in it. So go seek some fucking help. Get some serious psychiatric help, like serious help. Because if you walk around this app obsessing about me, you have a problem with your life.
Ryan.
Because I'm winning at life. How many coins did we put up today? I don't know. In an hour and a half, we put up 70,000 coins. Pretty sure we're just fine and winning at life every day.
No one is saying that Dan is responsible for her death. He didn't kill her. He didn't put the pills in her hand. He didn't force them down her mouth, and he didn't tell her she should do that to herself, right? He's not responsible for what she chose to do. What we are saying, though, is that he had a chance to save her life and possibly get medical help to her before it was too late, but he didn't even try. He didn't care enough about her as a person, or even as just a complete stranger, even if someone you didn't know. If you could save a life, you should try. Why would you not even try? He just went for a drive instead of trying to save a person's life. I don't understand that mindset. How selfish is that? And not only did he not choose to help himself when other people wanted to help and all he had to do was give the information over to them, he chose again to not do anything. So that's two choices that he made that he could have saved a life but did not. And I understand that it wasn't, guaranteed that if he did something that she would live. I mean, she still could have died from it. It could have been too late regardless. But the fact that you just didn't even try at all, that deserves to be called out, because you were one of the first people she contacted. You were one of the first that could have known and could have helped her, and you just did nothing. I can't believe there are people out there that would just do absolutely nothing when they could help save a life. Apparently, being live and battling to make money was more important to him than saving her life, or at least attempting to. And that is disgusting. That money is more important. Money isn't even real. You chose money over a person's existence. Their family is hurting right now, and you could have prevented that because you were one of the first people she reached out to. But instead, you stayed on live until all the people in your chat were having to tell you this was happening and making sure that you couldn't continue ignoring it. And that's when you decided to get offline. When you could no longer make your money without the people talking about it, you had to get off live, because what else are you going to do? But you still did nothing even after all that. How? Dan is still on his account to this day, posting this toxic positivity and banning anyone who tries to talk about Angela or the entire situation that happened. He really wants to prevent anyone who doesn't already know about it because, like I said, it's hard to research and there's not much out there about it. He wants to prevent the people that still follow and support him from finding out because a lot of them don't know what happened. If they weren't there on that day, they may not know about it. And if he's deleting everyone else who's trying to get the word out, they're not going to be able to get to his fans. They're going to continue to donate. And he's still making a decent amount of money. Maybe not as much as he was, but he's still making money doing this. I also wanted to say thanks again to the people who run the Dan Corey Receipts subreddit. I'll have it linked below so you can see. There's so much more receipts there than what I even needed for this video. There's a ton of stuff that shows his character and every other aspect of the things that he's been doing on these lives. And I just really appreciate that they are chronicling all of that in one place because otherwise I would not have been able to make this video and get the word out even more. He has lied about anything and everything. He says whatever he has to keep making money, and he is still drinking regularly and having freakouts on his audience members about anything that he's upset about. A lot of people won't even battle him anymore because he just talks about his problems the entire time and won't let anyone else speak. In the comments on one of the Reddit posts I was looking at on the Receipt subreddit, it talked about the fact that he has said more than once that TikTok lives are his free therapy that pays him. So he gets to vent about his problems to his audience and then they pay him for it. That's how he sees his audience. They're just a paycheck to him and a way to vent about anything that he's upset about. He'll just sit there and just yell, and even over top of the other people he's battling with. They can't even get a word in because he just won't stop ranting. Few people that will still battle him on live are bottom feeders, and they will defend him tooth and nail. They're parroting every single thing he's saying about this situation because they make money from battling with him and they don't want to lose that income. So just like him, they're going to say anything to keep making that money. This whole situation is disgusting. And because it's such a niche community, not many people are talking about it. There was only a few posts on TikTok, and there was none from what I could see on YouTube at all. There was here and there, like, screen grabs of his stuff, like recordings of some of his lives, but nothing where it brought all of it together to talk about exactly what he's been doing. And I felt that that was really important to bring attention to this as best I can. It was so wrong for him to feed into that parasocial relationship. He toyed with her emotions for financial gain, but later when she needed his help, it wasn't financially beneficial to him to help her, so he just didn't. That's disgusting. And this person does not deserve to have a platform anymore. He obviously isn't doing right with it. He lies constantly and just doesn't care about anyone else but himself, including his own family, obviously, because of all the crap that happened with his son. He just only cares about himself and what he wants, and everyone else be damned. On some of his more recent live streams this week, he's been saying things about wanting to leave TikTok and saying it's just not the same as it used to be. You can't make as much money as you used to be able to make. And also talking about all the haters because he thinks everyone who is on Angela's side or even mentions her is a hater. I really hope that he leaves TikTok. That would be great. Because then he wouldn't be able to scam anyone else into believing that he's a good person, a good father, or a good creator. Rest in peace, Angela.